Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, 10,000 warships of the Dominion fleet moved through space like a dark cloud. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. Together, they had conquered 400 worlds across the galaxy. This would be world number 401. Target planet confirmed, Commander, reported his navigation officer. The locals call it Earth. Population approximately 8 billion. Technology level is primitive by our standards. Vextar nodded. His red eyes studied the swirling white clouds that covered parts of the planet. It looked peaceful. They all did, until the conquest began. Any signs of advanced weapons? Space defenses? Negative, sir. They have small satellites and basic rockets. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest scout ship. Their most powerful weapons appear to be nuclear missiles, but they are slow and limited in range. Perfect. Vextar's scaled hands clasped behind his back. Send the standard surrender message. Tell them they have 6 hours to submit to Dominion rule or face total destruction. The message went out across all Earth communication channels. It was simple and direct, the same message that had been sent to 400 other worlds. Submit or die. Most worlds chose to submit after seeing the massive fleet hanging in their sky like a sword ready to fall. But the response that came back from Earth was different. Commander, the communications officer said, his voice confused. We are receiving a reply from the planet's surface. Good. They surrender quickly. Prepare the occupation forces. Sir, they are not surrendering. They are asking if we would like to meet with their representatives. Vextar turned around slowly. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever asked to meet. They either surrendered immediately or fought until they were destroyed. There was no third option. They want to meet? Yes, sir. They are requesting permission to send a small diplomatic ship to our flagship. They say they have representatives who would like to discuss the situation. The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at their commander. This had never happened before. What did it mean? Was it a trap? Did these humans have some secret weapon they were hiding? Sir, the tactical officer spoke up. Should we destroy their ship if they approach? Vextar thought for a moment. His military training told him to be suspicious, but his curiosity was stronger. In all his years of conquest, he had never met a species brave enough to approach a Dominion fleet voluntarily. What kind of beings were these humans? Allow them to approach, he decided, but keep all weapons ready. If this is some kind of trick, I want to be prepared. 2 hours later, a small white spacecraft approached the massive Dominion flagship. The human ship was tiny compared to the alien vessels, like a minnow swimming next to a whale. It docked, carefully with the flagship's landing bay. Vextar waited in the main conference room with his senior officers. They wore their full battle armor and carried energy weapons. The room's walls were lined with displays showing the power of the Dominion fleet. Every conquered world surrender was documented here. The message was clear. Resistance was hopeless. The doors opened and 2 humans walked in. Vextar had seen images of many alien species before conquering their worlds, but these humans looked strange to him. They had smooth skin instead of scales, and their eyes were small and round. They wore simple dark clothing that looked more like ceremonial robes than battle armor. The first human was a woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She walked forward without any sign of fear, despite being surrounded by armed alien warriors who towered over her. Greetings, she said in a clear voice. I am Kim Ji-woo, representing Earth's Diplomatic Council. Thank you for allowing us to meet with you. She bowed slightly, which confused the aliens. Why was she showing respect to her conquerors? The second human stepped forward. He was a man with glasses and carried a small electronic device. I am Park Hyun-woo from our Science Academy. We are very honored to make first contact with your civilization. Honored? Vextar exchanged glances with his officers. These humans were acting as if this was a celebration, not a conquest. You received our surrender demand, Vextar said, his voice deep and intimidating. You have seen our fleet. Why have you not submitted? Kim Ji-woo smiled. Actually smiled. We wanted to meet you first. This is the most important moment in human history. We are meeting beings from another world for the first time. How could we not want to learn about you, your people, your culture? Our culture? The alien commander was completely confused now. We are here to conquer your world. You should be afraid. You should be preparing to surrender. Oh, we understand that, Park Hyun-woo said, adjusting his glasses. But before we discuss any of that, could you tell us about your ships? The technology is amazing. How do you travel between stars so quickly? What kind of energy source powers vessels of this size? The aliens stared at him. The human was asking about their technology not to find weaknesses or steal secrets, but because he was genuinely curious. His eyes were bright with interest, like a child seeing something wonderful for the first time. I brought something for you, Kim Ji-woo said, reaching into a small bag she carried. The alien guards tensed, ready to fire their weapons, but she only pulled out a metal container. This is tea, a traditional drink from our world. I thought you might like to try it while we talk. She poured steaming liquid into small cups and offered them to the alien officers. The sweet smell filled the room. It was unlike anything the aliens had experienced before. This is how we greet guests on our world, she explained, with hospitality and refreshment. Guests. She had called them guests, not conquerors. Vextar looked down at the small cup in his large, scaled hands. The liquid was warm and had a pleasant smell. No one had ever offered him hospitality before. On every other world, people screamed and ran when they saw him. They begged for mercy or threw weapons at him. These humans were treating him like a friend who had come for a visit. Commander, his tactical officer whispered urgently, this could be poison. But Vextar found himself taking a small sip. The tea was warm and soothing, with a complex flavor he had never tasted before. It was pleasant. Do you like it? Kim Ji-woo asked hopefully. We have many different kinds of tea on Earth. Each region has its own special varieties. It is acceptable, Vextar said carefully, though privately he thought it was quite good. Park Hyun-woo was still looking around the room with fascination. Your ship design is remarkable. The way you have arranged the power distribution systems, the artificial gravity generator, it must have taken thousands of years to develop this technology. Why do you want to know this? Vextar asked. Because learning is what makes life worth living, Park Hyun-woo replied simply. Every day we can learn something new is a good day. Meeting you, seeing your ships, discovering that we are not alone in the universe. This is the greatest learning, opportunity in human history. The aliens looked at each other in complete confusion. These humans were not acting like any species they had ever encountered. Where was the fear? Where were the demands for mercy? Where was the desperate attempt to negotiate for their lives? Instead, these humans seemed genuinely happy to meet them. They offered food and drink. They asked questions about alien culture and technology out of pure curiosity. They treated their conquerors like honored guests. Vextar realized that everything he thought he knew about conquest was being challenged by two small humans with warm tea and friendly smiles. This was going to be more complicated than he had expected. 3 days had passed since the first meeting, and Vextar still could not understand what was happening. The humans had not surrendered. They had not attacked. Instead, they had done something completely unprecedented in the history of Dominion: conquests. They had invited the aliens to stay and learn about Earth culture. Commander, his second-in-command, Admiral Kresh, said as he entered the conference room. We have received another message from the planet's surface. Vextar looked up from the reports he was reading. Each one described impossible human behavior that made no sense according to everything he knew about conquest. What do they want now? Their leader, someone called President Lee Min-ho, has sent a formal invitation. He wants our officers to visit their cities, meet their people, and experience what he calls human hospitality before we make any final decisions about conquest. The room fell silent. Several officers exchanged worried glances. This has to be a trap, said Captain Nexry, the fleet's intelligence officer. No species offers hospitality to their conquerors. They must be planning something. But Vextar was curious. In his long military career, he had seen every kind of defense strategy: desperate attacks, hidden weapons, attempts at negotiation through fear, but he had never seen anything like this. Select 20 officers, he decided. They will go down to the planet's surface and observe these humans. If it is a trap, we will respond with overwhelming force. If it is not. He paused, not sure how to finish that sentence. What if it was not a trap? Sir, Admiral Kresh said carefully, are you certain this is wise? Our doctrine clearly states that extended contact with conquered populations can lead to complications. Vextar knew what Kresh meant. Sometimes, when Dominion forces spent too much time with alien populations, they began to question the necessity of conquest. It was considered a form of mental weakness, but his curiosity was stronger than his caution. 20 officers. Send them down. Dr. Choi So-young was nervous as she waited at the landing site. She had volunteered to host alien visitors, but now that their ship was actually descending from the sky, she wondered if she had made a mistake. What did one serve to beings who could destroy planets? The alien shuttle landed with a soft hum. 5 creatures emerged, each one nearly 8 feet tall with dark scales and red eyes. They wore strange armor that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. The leader approached her. I am Sub-Commander Kresh, he said in careful English. You are the human who requested to host Dominion officers? Yes, So-young replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I am Dr. Choi So-young. Welcome to Seoul. I hope you will enjoy your stay. Kresh stared at her. You hope we will enjoy ourselves? Of course, you are our guests. Please come with me. I have prepared rooms for you, and my grandmother is making dinner. The aliens followed her through the city streets. Everywhere they went, humans stopped to stare, but not with fear. Children pointed with excitement. Adults waved and called out greetings. Some people even tried to take pictures with the alien visitors. Why are they not running? Asked Lieutenant Vexal, one of the younger officers. I do not know, Kresh admitted. They arrived at So-young's apartment building. It was modest and ordinary, nothing like the grand palaces where other species housed, their conquerors, but it felt warm and welcoming. Grandmother, So-young called as they entered. Our guests have arrived. An elderly woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She looked up at the towering alien warriors without any sign of fear. Oh, you poor things, she said in Korean, then switched to broken English. You must be tired from long trip. Sit, sit. I make good food for you. Before the aliens could react, she was guiding them to chairs around a dinner table. The chairs were too small, but somehow she managed to find cushions and pillows to make them comfortable. Grandmother, Kresh said slowly, you are not afraid of us. The old woman laughed. Afraid? Why afraid? You are So-young's friends. Any friend of granddaughter is friend of mine. You hungry? She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with plates of food. The smells were amazing, unlike anything the aliens had ever experienced. There were vegetables cooked in ways they had never seen, grains prepared with spices that made their mouths water, and soups that warmed their bodies and somehow made them feel peaceful. This is bulgogi, So-young explained, pointing to one dish, and this is kimchi. It is made from fermented vegetables, very good for health. Lieutenant Vexal took a careful bite. His eyes widened in surprise. This is very pleasant. You like? The grandmother asked, beaming with pride. I teach you to make. Not difficult. After dinner, So-young took them to her laboratory at the university. She showed them her research on marine biology, her efforts to protect ocean life and understand underwater ecosystems. Why do you study creatures that serve no military purpose? Kresh asked. Because they are beautiful, So-young replied simply. And because understanding life in all its forms makes us better people. Look. She showed them images of colorful fish, dancing dolphins and coral reefs that looked like underwater cities. The aliens stared in fascination at the diversity and beauty of Earth's oceans. On my world, said Lieutenant Morak, speaking for the first time, we destroyed our oceans centuries ago to make room for military installations. That must have been very sad, So-young said gently. Morax nodded slowly. It had been sad, though. He had never thought about it that way before. Meanwhile, across the city, Colonel Yang Seokjin was leading another group of alien officers through a disaster response training exercise. An earthquake simulation was in progress, and human rescue teams were practicing their techniques. These humans, said Captain Thexry, watching the exercise, they risk their lives for beings they do not know? Yes, Yang replied. When disaster strikes, we help each other. It does not matter if you are family or stranger, rich or poor, young or old. If someone needs help, we help them. The aliens watched as human rescuers crawled through dangerous rubble to reach trapped victims. They saw medical teams treating injuries without asking about payment. They observed volunteers distributing food and water to anyone who needed it. But what do they gain from this? Asked Lieutenant Kexmo. How does helping strangers benefit them? Yang thought for a moment. It makes us human, he said finally. We believe that every life has value. When we save someone, we save a part of ourselves, too. The aliens did not understand, but they could see something in the humans' faces as they worked. There was purpose there, and satisfaction, and something else they could not name. Later, they would learn to call it compassion. As the day ended, the alien officers returned to their shuttle, confused and troubled. They had come expecting to see a primitive species cowering before superior firepower. Instead, they had found beings who offered friendship, shared their food, and spent their time protecting life rather than destroying it. That night, as Kresh filed his report to Commander Vextar, he struggled to find the right words. The humans continue to behave in ways that do not match any known conquest scenario, he wrote. They show no fear, make no demands, and seem genuinely interested in our welfare. Recommend continued observation to determine their true motives. But, privately, Kresh was beginning to suspect that the humans had no hidden motives at all. They were simply being kind, because that was their nature, and that possibility was more disturbing to him than any weapon could have been. 2 weeks into what was supposed to be a simple conquest, Vextar found himself reading the most confusing reports of his military career. His officers were sending back observations that challenged everything the Dominion believed about civilization, warfare, and the nature of intelligence itself. Sir, his communications officer announced, we have another batch of field reports from the surface teams. Vextar sighed. Each report was stranger than the last. Summarize them. Lieutenant Korth reports that human engineers deliberately design their machines to be less efficient in order to protect workers. Captain Zelix observed humans teaching their children to question authority figures, including their own parents and teachers. And Subcommander Theiss witnessed humans creating art that serves no practical purpose whatsoever. These reports make no sense, Admiral Kresh said, shaking his head. Why would an intelligent species choose inefficiency? Why would they encourage disobedience? And what possible benefit could art provide? Vextar was wondering the same things. Bring me the detailed reports. I want to understand what we are dealing with. The first report came from Lieutenant Korth, who had been assigned to observe human industrial facilities with engineer Kang Dae-hyun. Korth had expected to see the usual signs of an advanced civilization: maximum efficiency, worker obedience, production focused on military needs. Instead, he found something completely different. Every machine has multiple safety systems, Kang Dae-hyun had explained as they toured a manufacturing plant. See these emergency stops? Any worker can shut down the entire production line if they see a safety hazard. But that must reduce productivity, Korth had replied. Yes, it does. But worker safety is more important than production speed. Korth could not understand this logic. On Dominion worlds, workers were replaceable. Production was everything. Safety measures were expensive and inefficient. What if a worker stops production unnecessarily, he had asked. Then we investigate and improve our training. We never punish someone for caring about safety. The human had then shown him quality control systems designed to catch defects that might harm consumers, even if those defects would not be discovered for years. Entire production runs were sometimes discarded because they did not meet safety standards, even when they met functional requirements. Your machines serve you, Kang Daehyun had said, not the other way around. We build things to make life better for people, not to make people work harder for things. The second report came from Captain Zelix, who had been observing human education. With teacher Yoon Minji, Zelix had entered the classroom expecting to see young humans being trained for obedience and specialization, the way all civilized species educated their offspring. Instead, he witnessed something that seemed like chaos. Children were encouraged to ask questions. They were taught to think for themselves. They were even allowed to disagree with their teacher. Why do you let them challenge your authority? Zelix had asked Yoon Minji after watching a student argue about a historical interpretation. Because that is how they learn to think, she had replied. I am not here to fill their minds with facts. I am here to teach them how to find truth for themselves. But what if they find the wrong truth? Then they keep searching until they find a better one. That is what humans do. We never stop asking questions. Zelix watched as the children worked together on projects, sharing ideas and helping each other learn. There was no competition for dominance, no hierarchy based on strength or aggression. The smartest children helped the struggling ones instead of leaving them behind. You are teaching them to be weak, Zelix had observed. Yoon Minji had smiled. We are teaching them to be strong in ways you do not understand yet. The third report came from Sub-Commander This, who had been assigned to investigate human cultural activities with artist Young Subin. This had been particularly confused by his assignment. Military intelligence wanted him to understand why humans spent time and resources on activities that produced nothing useful. What strategic advantage did art provide? Young Subin had taken him to art galleries, concert halls, and theaters. This watched humans create paintings that could not be eaten, music that could not be weaponized, and stories that served no apparent practical purpose. Why do you do this? He had asked after watching a symphony orchestra perform a complex musical piece. Because it is beautiful, Young Subin had replied. But what do you gain from beauty? Joy. Wonder. A feeling that life is worth living. These could not compute this answer. In Dominion culture, feelings were weaknesses to be suppressed. Joy was a distraction from duty. Wonder was inefficiency, but he could see something in the human faces as they listened to the music. Their eyes were bright, their expressions peaceful. Some were even crying, but they seemed happy about it. This makes you stronger somehow? He had asked. It makes us human, Young Subin had said. When we create beauty, we create something that did not exist before. We add to the universe instead of just taking from it. Later that day, Young Subin had shown him children drawing pictures with crayons. The drawings were crude and served no function, but the children were completely absorbed in their work. They shared colors with each other and praised each other's efforts. They will never be professional artists, Young Subin had explained. But that does not matter. They are learning to see the world creatively, to express themselves, to find joy in making something new. This had watched a small girl draw a picture of the alien visitors. In her drawing, the tall, scary aliens were holding hands with human children under a rainbow. She had given the picture to Thais as a gift. He still did not understand why, but he kept the drawing. The most disturbing report came from Medical Officer Vrel, who had been observing human medical practices with Dr. Han Jion. Vrel had been injured during a training accident when a piece of equipment malfunctioned. He had expected the humans to leave him to heal on his own, as was normal for Dominion military units. Instead, Han Ji-yeon had immediately begun treating his wounds with the same care she would show to her own species. Why are you helping me? Vrel had asked as she cleaned and bandaged his injuries. Because you are hurt, she had replied, as if the answer was obvious. But I am your enemy. Han Ji-yeon had paused in her work and looked at him directly. Right now, you are my patient. That is all that matters. She had worked for 3 hours to repair damage to his arm, using expensive medical supplies and equipment. She had monitored his recovery, adjusted his medication, and checked on him daily until he was fully healed. This treatment would be expensive on your world, she had asked. Very expensive. Only high-ranking officers receive such care. Here, medical care is a right, not a privilege. We believe that everyone deserves to be healthy and free from pain. Vrel had observed human hospitals where the poor received the same treatment as the rich, where resources were allocated based on medical need rather than ability to pay. He watched human doctors work 18-hour shifts during emergencies, not because they were ordered to, but because people needed help. You could be resting, he had told Han Ji-yeon during one of these long shifts. People are suffering, she had replied. How could I rest? As Vextar finished reading these reports, he realized his conquest force was facing something unprecedented. The humans were not just technologically different or culturally unusual. They seemed to operate on completely different principles than every other species the Dominion had encountered. They chose compassion over efficiency. They valued questions over obedience. They created beauty for its own sake. They helped their enemies and treated strangers like family. According to every military manual Vextar had ever studied, such a species should be weak and easily conquered. They should be divided by selfishness and crippled by their refusal to prioritize military strength. Instead, they seemed to grow stronger through cooperation. Their willingness to help each other made them more resilient, not less. Their creativity led to innovations that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. Their questioning minds found solutions to problems that rigid thinking could never solve. Commander, Admiral Kresh said quietly. What are your orders? The fleet is awaiting instructions. Vextar stared at the blue planet on his main screen. For the first time in his military career, he did not know what to do. Continue observations, he said finally. I need to understand what we are dealing with before we can proceed. But privately, he was beginning to suspect that conquest might not be the right word for what was happening. The humans were not being conquered. They were teaching their conquerors to see the universe in a completely different way. Commander Vextar called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. The conference room that had once echoed with plans for planetary bombardment and troop deployments now filled with confused voices asking questions no Dominion officer had ever needed to ask before. Report on psychological warfare effectiveness, Vextar ordered. Admiral Thexus stood up, her expression troubled. Sir, our psychological warfare specialists have been unable to identify effective fear tactics. The humans appear to fear very little when they are protecting others. Traditional intimidation methods have been completely ineffective. Explain. We attempted standard fear conditioning by displaying our weapons capabilities. The humans expressed interest in the technology and asked if we needed help with maintenance. We demonstrated our ability to destroy their cities from orbit. They asked if our ships required supplies or if our crew needed medical attention. The room fell silent. They offered to help us maintain our weapons? Asked Captain Nexri. Yes, sir. They seemed to interpret displays of power as signs that we might need assistance rather than as threats to themselves. Vextar turned to his intelligence officer. What about their military capabilities? Have we identified their weaknesses? That is complicated, sir. Their military technology is primitive, but their tactical thinking is unlike anything in our databases. They do not seem to understand the concept of acceptable losses. What do you mean? They will risk entire units to save single individuals. They spend enormous resources on medical care for wounded soldiers. They have rescue protocols that prioritize civilian safety over mission objectives. According to standard military doctrine, these should be critical weaknesses. But they are not? No, sir. These behaviors seem to make their forces more effective, not less. Their soldiers fight harder because they know their comrades will never abandon them. Their civilians support the military completely because they trust that the military will protect them. Their willingness to sacrifice for others creates loyalty that we cannot break. The discussion was interrupted when Captain Nam Ji-hoon was brought into the room. Vextar had requested to interview this human directly, after reading a disturbing report from interrogator Keksal. Nam Ji-hoon was a former prisoner of war who had been captured by a hostile species 5 years earlier. He had endured 2 years of captivity before being rescued. According to standard psychological profiles, he should have been broken by the experience, filled with hatred for alien species. Instead, he seemed remarkably peaceful. You were tortured by aliens, Vexatar said without introduction. Yet you show no fear of us. Nam Ji-hoon nodded calmly. Yes, I was captured by the Krixitar Empire. They were not kind to their prisoners. You should hate all alien species because of this experience. Why would I hate you for something you did not do? You are not the Krikstar. Each species is different, each individual is different. Kexel, who had been conducting interrogations, spoke up. Commander, this human spent his captivity teaching his guards about human philosophy and ethics. He showed them pictures of his family, shared stories about Earth culture, and tried to help them understand human values. While they were torturing you? Vextar asked Nam Ji-hoon. Yes. I thought that if they could understand us better, they might treat us better, and some of them did begin to change. One guard started bringing me extra food. Another began asking questions about human art and music. You tried to convert your captors? I tried to connect with them as fellow thinking beings. We may look different, but we all have hopes and fears, dreams and sorrows. When you see someone as a person rather than an enemy, everything changes. The aliens in the room exchanged uncomfortable glances. The idea of treating prisoners as people rather than sources of information was completely foreign to them. What did you hope to accomplish? Vextar asked. I hope to plant seeds of understanding that might grow into peace. Violence creates more violence, but understanding can break the cycle. Later that day, trauma surgeon Dr. Bai Yunji was brought before the alien command staff to explain human medical ethics. Why do humans often choose to suffer for others? Vextar asked her directly. Dr. Bai considered the question carefully. Because we understand that we are all connected. When one person suffers, we all suffer. When one person heals, we all become stronger. But surely you prioritize your own survival over that of strangers. Sometimes, but often, no. Parents sacrifice for their children because they love them. Soldiers die for their comrades because they trust them. Researchers dedicate their lives to curing diseases they will never have because they want to reduce suffering in the world. Medical officer Vrel, who had been treated by Dr. Han Ji-yeon, spoke up. Doctor, you could have let me heal slowly and focused your resources on your own people. Why did you not do this? Because you were in pain. Dr. Bai replied simply. I became a doctor to reduce pain and suffering wherever I find it. Your species does not matter to me. Your pain does. Even though we came here to conquer you? Even then. Healing is not conditional on politics or warfare. A patient is a patient. Vextar found himself asking questions he had never considered before. What do you gain from this philosophy? How does helping your enemies benefit you? Dr. Bai smiled. It makes us better people. Every time we choose compassion over revenge, understanding over hatred, healing over harming, we become more than we were before. We grow. But this makes you vulnerable to exploitation. Sometimes. But it also makes us strong in ways that weapons cannot match. When people know that you will help them regardless of who they are, they begin to trust you. Trust builds cooperation. Cooperation creates communities, and communities can survive anything. As the day continued, more reports came in from the surface teams. Each one described human behaviors that challenged basic Dominion assumptions about intelligence and civilization. Engineer Kang Dae-hyun had shown alien technicians how humans shared technological innovations freely instead of hoarding them for military advantage. Teacher Yoon Minji had demonstrated how human education systems encouraged creativity and independent thinking rather than obedience and specialization. Artist Jung Subin had explained how human creativity led to innovations that had both practical and aesthetic value. But the most disturbing report came from alien cultural analyst Zephyr, who had been studying human children with child psychologist Song Hanul. The human young are taught to play, Zephyr reported. They engage in activities that serve no survival function, develop no military skills, and provide no economic benefit. Yet this play seems to be considered essential to their development. What do they gain from this play? Vextar asked. Joy, apparently, and something they call imagination. They create fictional scenarios, explore impossible ideas, and experiment with social roles. The adult humans seem to believe this makes the children more adaptable and creative. More creative for what purpose? For solving problems that do not yet exist, finding answers to questions that have not yet been asked, and creating beauty that serves no purpose except to make life worth living. The room fell silent again. The concept of preparing for unknown problems rather than drilling for known procedures was completely alien to Dominion thinking. "Sir," Admiral Kresh said quietly, "I am beginning to suspect that conquering these humans would not gain us another subjugated world. It would destroy something unique in the universe." "Explain." "They have developed forms of strength we do not understand. They solve problems through cooperation instead of domination. They create rather than just consume. They heal rather than just harm. They build communities that make everyone stronger instead of hierarchies that make leaders powerful. You think they are superior to us? I think they are different from us in ways that matter, and I think we might learn from them if we do not destroy them first." Vextar looked around the room at his officers. These were warriors who had conquered hundreds of worlds, soldiers who had never questioned the righteousness of Dominion expansion. But now he saw doubt in their eyes, curiosity where once there had been certainty. The humans were not just resisting conquest, they were making their conquerors question the very nature of conquest itself. "Continue observations," he ordered, "but prepare no offensive actions until further notice." "Sir," Admiral Thexis asked, "what do we tell the Dominion Council when they ask for our progress report?" Vextar stared at the blue planet on his screen, where humans went about their daily lives of helping each other, creating beauty, asking questions, and building communities. "Tell them we have encountered something unprecedented," he said finally, "and we need more time to understand what it means." What he did not say was that he was beginning to suspect the humans had already won a victory more complete than any military conquest could ever achieve. They were changing their enemies into something better than they had been before. 3 weeks into what should have been a completed conquest, Commander Vextar made a decision that would have been unthinkable just a month before. He decided to visit the planet's surface himself. His officers were concerned, but Vextar needed to understand what his subordinates had been reporting. The descriptions of human behavior were so far outside normal parameters that he had to see for himself whether they were accurate or whether his officers were suffering from some form of mental contamination. Chaplain Kim Woo-jin met him at the Yi landing site. Vexitar had specifically requested to visit what humans called a hospice, a facility that made no sense according to any logical analysis. The humans were apparently spending significant resources caring for individuals who were dying and could no longer contribute to society. "Welcome to Earth, Commander," Kim Woo-jin said with a gentle smile. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." Vextar studied the human chaplain. Kim Woo-jin was elderly by human standards, his hair gray and his movements slow. In Dominion society, he would have been retired from useful service decades ago. Yet the humans seemed to value his presence. "You spend your time with the dying," Vextar observed as they walked through the hospice corridors. "What purpose does this serve?" "Everyone deserves to die with dignity, surrounded by love and care," Kim Woo-jin replied. "Death is a part of life, but it should not be a part we face alone." They entered a quiet room where an elderly woman lay in bed, surrounded by family members. Her breathing was labored, and it was clear she would not live much longer. Yet her family was holding her hands, talking to her softly and sharing memories of her life. "She cannot contribute anything to your society," Vextar said. "She consumes resources but produces nothing. Why do you not simply let her die quickly?" Kim Woo-jin looked at him with an expression that was not angry but deeply sad. "Commander, she is not just dying. She is living her last moments, and those moments matter just as much as all the moments that came before. But she is no longer productive. She raised 6 children who became teachers, doctors, and engineers. She volunteered at schools for 30 years. She helped hundreds of families through difficult times. Her productivity is not measured by what she can do today, but by what she has given to the world throughout her life." The family members around the bed were crying, but they were also smiling as they shared stories. They talked about funny things she had said, kind things she had done, and lessons she had taught them. "They are celebrating someone who is dying?" Vextar asked, confused. "They are celebrating someone who lived well and loved much. Her body is failing, but her impact on the world will continue through all the people she touched. In a way, she is not really dying at all. She is becoming part of something larger than herself." As they moved through the hospice, Vexitar saw volunteers reading to patients who could no longer see, musicians playing gentle songs for those who could no longer speak, and families spending their last precious hours with loved ones. "This makes you stronger as a species somehow," he asked. "It makes us human," Kim Woo-jin replied. "When we care for the vulnerable, the sick, and the dying, we honor the value of every life. We say that people matter not because of what they can do for us, but simply because they exist." Meanwhile, across the city, alien cultural analyst Zephyr was having his worldview fundamentally challenged by historian Professor O. Sulgi. "Your species has conquered 400 worlds," Professor O said as they sat in her university office, surrounded by books and historical documents. "Tell me about your greatest achievements." Zephyr thought for a moment. "We have the largest fleet in the galaxy. We control more territory than any other species. Our military has never been defeated." "And what have you built with all this? Power?" The question puzzled Zephyr. "Built? We have built an empire." "Yes, but what have you created? What knowledge have you discovered? What beauty have you added to the universe? What problems have you solved?" Zephyr realized he could not answer these questions. The Dominion had focused entirely on expansion and control. They had never considered creation or discovery to be important. Professor O showed him human history through a different lens. She showed him how humans had learned from their mistakes, how they had gradually developed concepts of rights, justice, and equality. She showed him how human societies had evolved from tribal warfare to global cooperation. "We were not always peaceful," she admitted. "We fought terrible wars, enslaved each other, and committed great cruelties, but we learned. We grew. We became better than we were." How? By asking questions, by listening to different perspectives, by admitting when we were wrong and trying to do better, by believing that people can change and that tomorrow can be better than today. She showed him human achievements in science, medicine, art, and philosophy. Not weapons or conquest, but discoveries that improved life for everyone. "Your species progresses through cooperation rather than domination?" Zephyr asked. "We progress fastest when we work together. Competition can drive innovation, but collaboration creates breakthroughs that no individual could achieve alone." The most profound revelation came at a children's playground, where child psychologist Song Hanul was supervising an unprecedented experiment. Young alien officers, barely adults by Dominion standards, were meeting human children for the first time. The alien youngsters had been raised in rigid military hierarchies where play was discouraged as inefficient and creativity was suppressed as dangerous. They had never experienced childhood as humans understood it, but something magical happened when they met the human children. At first, the young aliens stood stiffly, unsure how to interact with beings who approached them without fear or formality. The human children simply accepted their presence and began including them in their games. "Want to play spaceship?" asked a 6-year-old girl named Mina. "You can be the alien captain and I will be the human explorer, and we can discover new planets together." The young alien officer, Nixith, had never played before. He did not understand the concept of pretending, of creating imaginary scenarios just for fun. But Mina was patient with him. "It is easy," she explained. "We just imagine things. See, this swing set is our spaceship, and that sandbox is an alien world. We can explore it and be friends with the aliens we meet there." Slowly, carefully, Nixith began to play. He discovered the joy of imagination, the pleasure of creating stories, the satisfaction of cooperation without competition. For the first time in his life, he laughed. Song Hanul watched with tears in her eyes as alien children who had been taught only discipline and obedience learned to play, to imagine, and to simply enjoy being young. "What are you teaching them?" asked an older alien officer who was observing. "I am not teaching them anything," Song Hunnell replied. "They are discovering parts of themselves that were always there but never allowed to grow." By the end of the day, young aliens and human children were running around the playground together, creating elaborate games that mixed human imagination with alien experiences. They built sandcastles that looked like spaceships, drew pictures of impossible worlds where different species lived together in peace, and invented stories about adventures across the galaxy. When it was time to leave, the young aliens did not want to go. "Can we come back tomorrow?" Nixith asked Song Hunnell. "Of course," she replied. "You are always welcome here." As Vextar watched the reports from all these interactions, he began to understand something that changed everything. The humans were not trying to defeat the Dominion through military might or clever strategy. They were offering something far more powerful and far more dangerous to the Dominion way of life. They were offering hope. Hope that conquest was not the only path to greatness. Hope that different species could coexist without one dominating the other. Hope that intelligence could be used to create rather than destroy. Hope that individuals could matter more than empires. And most dangerous of all, they were proving that this hope was not naive idealism but practical reality. Their society worked. Their people were healthy, creative, and fulfilled. Their civilization continued to grow and improve while building rather than destroying. That evening, Vextar stood alone on the observation deck of his flagship, looking down at the blue and green planet that had changed everything. His communications officer approached carefully. "Commander, we have received a message from Dominion Central Command. They are requesting an immediate status report on the conquest of Earth." Vextar continued staring at the planet. Lights were beginning to appear as the night side of Earth rotated into view. Each light represented human communities where people were caring for each other, learning from each other, creating beauty together. "What should I tell them, sir?" the communications officer asked. For the first time in his military career, Vextar did not know how to answer. How could he explain that his conquest fleet had encountered something that made conquest itself seem primitive and wasteful? How could he report that the humans had defeated them not with weapons, but with kindness? How could he tell the Dominion Council that he was beginning to believe the humans were not primitive at all, but were actually more advanced than the Dominion in ways that truly mattered? "Tell them," he said slowly, "that we need more time to complete our assess." 1 month after the Dominion fleet had arrived to conquer Earth, Commander Vextar faced the most important decision of his long military career. The choice he made would not only determine the fate of humanity, but would reshape the future of the galaxy itself. His senior officers had gathered in the main conference room, but this meeting was unlike any they had held before. Instead of discussing battle plans and occupation strategies, they were debating questions that went to the heart of what it meant to be civilized. "The Dominion Council is demanding an immediate report," Admiral Kresh announced. "They want to know why we have not completed the conquest of this world." "What do we tell them?" asked Captain Nexri. Vextar looked around the room at officers who had been transformed by their contact with humanity. Their eyes held something that had not been there a month ago. Doubt, yes, but also hope, wonder, the beginning of wisdom. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We tell them that we have discovered something more valuable than another conquered world." The room fell silent. "Sir," Admiral Thexis said carefully, "the Council will not understand that answer." "Then, we will help them understand." Vextar activated the ship's communication system and sent a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. "This is Commander Vextar of the Dominion First Fleet, requesting immediate transport to Earth's surface for a formal diplomatic meeting with human leadership." The response came quickly from President Lee Minho himself. "Commander Vextar, you and your officers are welcome to meet with the United Nations General Assembly. We have prepared a place for you to address the representatives of all human nations." 2 hours later, Vextar stood before the largest gathering of human leaders in their history. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from every nation on Earth. Translation devices allowed every word to be understood by everyone present. But instead of the surrender demand everyone expected, Vextar spoke words that no Dominion commander had ever spoken before. "People of Earth," he began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the hall. "I came here to conquer your world. I brought 10,000 warships and 500,000 soldiers. I expected to add Earth to the list of worlds that serve the Dominion Empire." The hall was completely silent. "Instead, I have discovered something that changes everything I thought I knew about civilization, about intelligence, and about what it means to be truly advanced." He paused, looking out at the human faces watching him with curiosity rather than fear. "You have shown us forms of strength we did not know existed. You have demonstrated that cooperation can be more powerful than conquest, that creativity can solve problems that force cannot touch, that compassion can build communities stronger than any army. You have taught us that intelligence is not just about building better weapons, but about building better lives. That advancement is not measured by how many worlds you control, but by how much wisdom, beauty, and happiness you create." Diplomat Kim Ji-woo, who had been part of that first impossible meeting, stepped forward. "Commander Vextar, what are you asking of us?" Vextar took a deep breath. What he was about to say would change the course of galactic history. "I am asking for something that has never been asked in Dominion history. I am asking for permission to learn from you." The hall erupted in surprised murmurs, but Vextar continued. "I am formally requesting that Earth accept the Dominion as students rather than subjects. We want to understand how you have built a civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. We want to learn how you create rather than just consume, how you heal rather than just harm." President Lee Min-ho stood up. "And in return? In return, we offer you the protection of the Dominion fleet and access to the knowledge of 400 worlds. But more than that, we offer you the chance to teach the galaxy a better way to live." Kim Ji-woo smiled, and in that smile was the same warmth that had greeted the aliens on that first day. "Commander Vextar, you and your people are welcome to stay and learn for as long as you wish. That is what we do for friends, and that is what you have become." The transformation that followed was unprecedented in galactic history. The Dominion fleet, designed for conquest, became the first interstellar cultural exchange program. Alien officers studied human institutions, learning about democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. They observed human schools, hospitals, and research centers. Dr. Park Hyun-woo led joint research projects that combined human creativity with alien technology. The results were innovations that benefited both species and laid the groundwork for technologies that would improve life across the galaxy. Dr. Choi So-young established the first interspecies medical program, teaching alien physicians about human concepts of patient care and medical ethics. The grandmother who had welcomed alien warriors into her home became famous across the Dominion as the first human to show aliens what hospitality truly meant. Colonel Yang Seokjin trained alien soldiers in disaster relief and rescue operations. Warriors who had been trained only to destroy learned to save lives, to protect the vulnerable, and to serve communities rather than conquer them. Teacher Yoon Min-ji opened the first interspecies school, where alien children learned alongside human children. They studied not just facts and skills, but how to think critically, how to question assumptions, and how to work together to solve problems. Artist Jung Subin introduced aliens to human creativity, and they began to create art of their own. For the first time in their history, Dominion culture included beauty created for its own sake rather than for propaganda or intimidation. The most profound changes came from the simple fact of friendship. Alien officers who had expected to rule over humans instead found themselves living among them, sharing meals, celebrating holidays, and learning what it meant to be part of a community rather than part of a hierarchy. 6 months later, Vextar stood in the same garden where human and alien children now played together every day. The sight that would have been impossible to imagine when he arrived had become a daily reality. His former tactical officer, now an apprentice teacher, was showing young aliens how to paint with watercolors. His communications specialist was learning to play human music. His medical officer was working in a human hospital, treating patients of both species with equal care. Kim Ji-woo approached him, carrying 2 cups of the tea that had started everything. "Any regrets, Commander?" she asked, offering him a cup. Vextar accepted the tea and took a sip. It still tasted wonderful. "Only one," he said. "I regret that it took us so long to find you. You found us when you were ready to learn," Kim Ji-woo replied. "That is what matters." They stood in comfortable silence, watching children of 2 species play together under an alien sun, while their parents planned a future that would be built on understanding rather than conquest. Vexitar's final report to the Dominion Council was the shortest and most important he had ever written. "We came to conquer a world, and instead discovered what it means to be civilized. The humans have not made us weaker, they have made us better. Conquest was never the goal, understanding was. I recommend immediate implementation of the Earth. Protocols across all Dominion worlds. We should not be conquering civilizations, we should be learning from them. The greatest victory belongs not to the strongest, but to those who can teach others to become better than they were before." The response from Dominion Central Command came swiftly. "Request approved. All conquest fleets are hereby ordered to establish cultural exchange protocols. The age of expansion through force has ended. The age of growth through understanding has begun." Years later, historians would mark the arrival of the Dominion fleet at Earth as the moment when the galaxy began to grow up. Not because humanity was perfect, but because humanity had learned something that the greatest military powers had missed. True strength came not from the ability to conquer others, but from the wisdom to help others conquer their own limitations. True advancement was measured not by how much territory you controlled, but by how much kindness, creativity, and hope you brought into the universe. And the humans had been doing both all along.